Hey everybody, it's Marcus Cole with the West Virginia Soccer Association. We're here for our another WVSA Digital Network Series webinar. Tonight we have another coaching webinar with our WVSA Director of Coaching Education, Tomas Olivier. Today we're going to be talking about breaking down training plans for 4v4 and 7v7 grassroots coaches. Tomas, welcome back to the webinar.
Thank you, Marcus. Hello, everybody. Marcus, how's my voice? Pretty good?
Sounds great.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I apologize for having to reschedule. Marcus was nice enough to do that a few weeks ago. That was entirely my doing with a little emergency that couldn't be prevented. So I apologize for any inconvenience. Here we are, part 2 of what we're doing as a 3-part series. As some of you may or may not know, we're excited to welcome Carl Gray from the Northern Virginia Soccer Club and Virginia Youth Soccer Association coaching instruction staff next Friday to kind of wrap up this 3-part series. Taking you back a couple of weeks, we talked about the play, practice, play methodology, and we talked about the ins and outs of the new coaching curriculum for U.S. soccer. So what I thought we would do today is really focus on the 4v4 and 7v7 and just give you some sample exercises and sample methodology pieces. I would like as much as possible to make this interactive. So if you have a question or you want to interject something, please type it into a chat. And Marcus, feel free to interrupt as many times as possible or as many times as you need to make a question known so that it can benefit everybody. So I want this to be as interactive as we can. So here we are, Friday, May 1st. The coaching discussion that we want to center around tonight is the 4v4 and 7v7 game model. And the objective or the goal of tonight's session is to try to analyze and discuss the different player behaviors that 4v4 kids bring to the table. And then eventually down the road in about 30 minutes or so, we'll do the same thing with the 7v7 players as we get into talking about U9 and U10 players at the 7v7 level. And then the outcome or the objective, I suppose, is to try to understand the player framework that we use from developmental perspective and what the key qualities in theory are of 4v4 players. So let's review quickly. We got the what, the where, the when, the who's involved, how, and then more importantly, why. How we're going to do something, it's all theoretical, it's all nice and good, but we all know when we get to the field, we need to have a couple of tricks up our sleeve, if you will, when we're dealing with 4v4 kids, 6, 7, and 8-year-olds. And then I put the why at the end of the sentence there because I think it's important for us to understand as coaches and as adults dealing with these kids is how can we get them to understand why something needs to be or why something should or should not be on the field. Whether it's a dribble, whether it's shoot, whether it's come back and go back into this space, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm a big fan of getting kids to really think about the why and how do we get them to understand and have that aha moment as much as possible and see that light bulb, but if not completely light up, at least flicker a little bit, if you will. So now let's talk about what are they supposed to do, right? What do we think 4v4 U8 players are supposed to do? If we look at the player actions here from U.S. Soccer, and I'll turn your attention to the left column, in red are the attacking do's and don'ts, if you will, and in blue are the defending do's and don'ts. I am not going to discuss or talk about defending right now because we're going to emphasize the attacking aspect of the training session tonight, and we might do defending some other time. So looking at it real quick, at the U6 level, they want to try to be able to pass, dribble, or shoot, right? The 3 main components of what they can do with the ball at their feet. And as they get into U7, U8, maybe in order for them to accomplish those U6 tasks of pass, dribble, and shoot, we can get them to spread out or unheard, if you will, create maybe some passing opportunities or options for them to utilize. And how do we get them to support the attack? Obviously, we're all clear on the fact that we're not going to use that jargon or those coaching terms with the kids. But from a theoretical standpoint, we would like them to talk about or to discuss supporting the attack. Who should be where? That's really what it is. Who should be where? And then as you see the second column, the U9, U10, you'll see that some of the concepts start to expand a little bit. And in order to create those passing options, in order to support the attack, we have to look to create 1v1 and 2v1 opportunities. But let's not talk about that right now. Let's try to break it down in more simple, fundamental terms, I would say. So if those are the player actions that ideally, in a perfect world, U8, 6, 7-year-olds should be doing, Let's talk about what they bring to the table, what they bring to the field, and what our corresponding coach behavior might be to match that. So the question is, how does player behavior influence coach behavior? How does what Johnny brings or what Sally brings to the field that day, every week, or something different every day of every week, how does that influence what we need to do as coaches to get the best out of the kids and make sure that they're experiencing soccer as they should be, which is fun, and wait for it, which is fun. That's what we're looking for at U8. So if we agree that some of the player behaviors that U8s bring are a short attention span, I would be flabbergasted if not everybody who's listening right now wouldn't agree with that, a short attention span. They live kind of in the moment, and for some kids that's 3 to 5 seconds. Some kids it's maybe 10 seconds. Maybe an overachieving young man or young woman is going to be living in that moment for 20 seconds, but really they worry about the moment and they move on. The focus typically is on oneself, not necessarily others when it relates to the ball, because after all, the ball is that toy, and sometimes it's difficult for us to get them to share the toy, if you will. Small incidental things that maybe seem innocuous to you and I, or take over a huge importance level in their mind. And then, of course, they're always in motion. So when we look at all those 5, and let's say you're sitting there thinking, well, maybe I agree with 2 or 3 of them. Okay, take the 2 or 3 of them that you agree with, and then say to yourself, how do I respond in turn or in kind to those behaviors? So something to think about as coaching behaviors is maybe we start looking at the exercises as short and to the point. Okay, reminders are necessary, no problem, but we want to keep it short. We want to keep it brief, right? We don't want to get into a PhD level dissertation with them because, in the words of Jerry Maguire, you had me at hello, right? They're going to be gone, one and done with you, and it's going to be difficult to get them back, all right? If they live in the moment, let's talk about what happened, present tense, and not worry about what happened, past tense, right? If their focus is on themselves and primarily themselves, then let's accept that behavior as what it is. Let's praise them when they do share ideas, share the ball, share the space, etc., right? If small and incidental things that again seem innocuous tonight, are important to them, then let's appreciate the things that they do take seriously, even if you don't necessarily share in that seriousness with them. Okay, remember, as adults, we don't necessarily have to understand what they're saying or what they're doing, but we can appreciate and put into perspective. And then, of course, they're always in motion. Okay, so sometimes in order to harness that in a positive way, we try to put routines on them and a little bit, and I do mean a little bit of structure to manage them during those practices and their games. So I'm going to leave this up here for a while, and I'm going to ask a couple of you at this point, if you're interested, is just put in the chat right here and tell us what do you think is the one that you can understand or you can have a feel for the best right now. Out of these 5 right here, which one of these 5 do you find yourself thinking, yeah, I agree? Or conversely, is there one of these 5 where you say, yeah, I don't agree at all with this? Anybody have a thought on that? If not,
I think we may have a shy group here, Tomas.
All right, now don't be shy now, boys and girls, ladies and gents. Okay, no problem. Well, we'll come back to something like that here down the road. So those are the player behaviors, and then the corresponding coach behaviors that perhaps in theoretical terms and to some degree practical terms we are looking at with these U8 4v4 players. So let's talk about the game itself. Here's a little task for all of us. Let's observe a very quick 8-minute 4v4 match. Okay, you're going to see a group of 4v4, and I think the game that you're going to see and the qualities and the actions or inactions, as it were, of some of the kids are going to be representative of the things that you've seen at 4v4 on your fields. So let's take a look at this. You have the blue team on the left. You have obviously the orange and white striped team on the right, and you have a field that's laid out using a full field that is approximately 25 by 35, and you'll see when we get to it that they have small goals. You're also going to notice that one of the blue kids believes that goalkeepers are mandatory, if not necessary, in 4v4 soccer. But I think his coach is going to remind him that he can go ahead and join the action. So here we go. Oh. Right now, their shape and spacing is tremendous, but give it 5 seconds. All right, well, the spacing was tremendous. Here comes a coaching reminder there. Think about, as you're analyzing this or as you're watching this, think about a couple things. One is, what would you be telling your players if this was a field that you were on? If you were maybe this gentleman in the black or this lady here in the orange or red, what would you be telling your players that you would like them to do or encouraging them to do? Well done by the young man there with a little pullback and a little pass through. Good for him. So the young man's going to kick it in from the side. Looking back, that's maybe not what we had talked about at the last practice on that move by the young fellow, but that's okay. Just do a couple more minutes here. Again, think about, as you're watching this, what would you be telling your kids? And if this is a typical Saturday morning game, maybe what would you be doing on Tuesday or Wednesday at the next practice, based on what you're seeing? Ooh. It does seem that we have some opportunities to work on defending in the next few training sessions if we wanted to. That's good. That might have been a couple opportunities there to encourage them to share the wealth there. But you can't fault him for trying to take a player on and shooting. Okay, so as we look at the little 5-minute snippet there of that game, let's circle back to what we talked about a couple weeks ago with respect to how does a training activity get structured, and what is it that we need to think about as we looked at our game from the last few minutes, and as we want to put together something for the following week. Let's look at the 5 elements of a training activity. You'll recall, if you participated in the one of our Grassroots courses, or if you came to the webinar a few weeks ago, that there are 5 elements of a training activity that once you put them all together should give you plenty of opportunity to have an efficient chance to coach and a structured environment for the kids to operate under. So one is the session organized? Is it organized the right way, keeping in mind the developmental needs of the kids, their ages, their personalities, etc.? Is the activity or within the training, what you're going to pick and what you're going to select for them to do, is that game-like? Does it replicate what happens in the game? We'll see in a few minutes in the training activity we're going to talk about. We'll try to maximize opportunities for 1v1 and 2v1, and that certainly replicates the game in a 4v4 game model. 3, again, is it repetitive? Do we get a lot of chances to see that particular task or that particular sequence in play? And do we have enough chances for the kids to repetitively go through that sequence? 4, is there an appropriate, and again, age and developmentally sound challenge level associated with it? So is it sort of from a zone of proximal development type discussion? Is it right about where they are? Is it a little higher than where they should be? Or is it a little too low based on the group, the level of expertise, if you will, the level of comfort that you're asking the players to have? And then 5, are 1, 2, 3, and 4 there? That's really what 5 is. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4, typically that doesn't equal 5, but in this case, that'll allow you to get to 5, which is, can you effectively and efficiently coach, right? And then we'll get back to the self-reflection questions here later. So if that's the case, and we saw our little game, and we know what the players bring as far as behaviors and what corresponding coach behaviors we might want to think about bringing to the field and matching them with, and if those are the elements of a good activity, then let's see if we can put it together. So here, 4v4 training environment, you have the first play phase. You have a field that's about 25 by 35 total, and you play 2v2 or 3v3, and you are trying to give them little snippets, little golden nuggets, if you will, of information, right? You know what you're looking for is opportunities for them to either pass or dribble at the right time, and how do they make their decisions? What do they go about doing before they select what to do next? That's really what we're looking for in this little first play phase. And we're going to try to get something out of that training session by using some keywords, some buzzwords, if you will, and using the guided discovery method, which is, simply put, you guide them to discover the question at hand on their own, at their own pace, by simply nudging them along with question after question to check for understanding. And we're going to talk about that here shortly. So you have the first play phase here. Then we get into the second component, which, as you know, is the practice phase. At the very top here, actually, I should ask, Marcus, would you mind unmuting your mic? I'm sorry. Can you yourself see this right here pretty well, the graphic? Is it pretty good?
Yeah, pretty good.
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, so you guys will see at the top left, you have the core activity. And we went through this in prior sessions, where you have 3 ideas and 3 exercises. One is your baseline, your core activity, and then your plan B would be to have something that is a bit less challenging for them if the case requires it. And then your plan B/C would be to have something that's a bit more challenging if you think that the group is ready for that. So let's look at the first one. The first one is a fairly simple exercise. You have 3 players here in blue triangles, and you have another set of 3 players in blue triangles. Right? What we usually do with our teams is we call them each a team, whether it's a team from the MLS, whether it's a team from WSL. I try not to use teams that are from the world because I'd like for them to be a bit more aware of American soccer. But obviously, sometimes they want to be Barca, they want to be Juventus, they want to be Man United, etc. So I will tell you one day that one of the kids, he wanted to be Feyenoord from Holland, which I thought was impressive for a 7-year-old to know who Feyenoord is. But so we have the two groups. We have the Blues, and then we have two players in red that are defenders. So we're going to have 6 blue pennies, 3 here, 3 here, and then we'll have 2 red pennies right here. You as the coach are going to stand right here, right at the edge of this little channel of space, if you will. And that channel of space is it depends on your team, but maybe 5, maybe 7 yards wide right here. And then upon your decision and upon your command, you're going to have either one group of blue players or another group of blue players go through the middle section and try to beat the defender. Obviously, there's only 2 defenders and there's 3 attackers. So one of those attackers should have a lot of freedom of expression, if you will, and a lot of freedom of movement to go through that little channel of space, that little buffer, the defending zone. Then you have the other team go the other way. So maybe you have one team coming this way from top to bottom, and then you have the other team going from bottom to top. So you repeat the process, and of course you want to change players around. So you have different groups of 2 players being defenders. You tell the defenders, hey, just do the best you can, but try not to let them get past you. We can leave it at that as a little guiding principle for the defenders. And then the key words you're going to really focus on and emphasize with the attackers is, hey, can we get soft, little touches until it's time for a little harder and faster touch? Where do you think you want to go and why? Okay, look at the space here. Is the space in front of you good, or is the space next to you good? Do you want to go inside this space, or do you want to go inside this space? Oh, but wait, what if one of your blue teammates is doing that? What do you need to do? Well, what happens in a real game? Well, sometimes in a real game, you have a good idea, but your teammate has a good idea too. So no problem. She can have a good idea, and you just go somewhere else. No problem. So some of the guided questions we're going to throw at them here and there are right here in the instructions. How do you keep the ball close? How do you dribble a little faster? What's the difference between dribbling forward and dribbling to the side? Maybe you add a 4th question with your group. When do you think you should dribble forward or dribble to the side? And of course, the easy answers we are all aware of. Hey, you want to be gentle and soft on the ball. You want to use maybe harder touches when you want to dribble faster. And you have to make sure that you use a different part of the foot when you're dribbling forward as versus dribbling to the side. Okay, so easy little set of exercise there. Shouldn't have any problem with most of the people, if not all the people that are watching or listening. And then you get to a situation where you think, well, you know what? This is my 2nd time with this group. It's brand new. I thought I could try it, but maybe they're not ready for it. So if that's the case, you go to your plan B, and all you're doing right here is you're just removing that buffer. And you have the players on their own. So you have 8 players dribbling past opponents, but you don't have them there. Okay? You're just dribbling and working on their abilities, or their capabilities, I should say, of 1v1 dribbling, even though they're really dribbling against a shadow. So we work on that a little bit, and maybe then you go back to your core activity again, and then give another try and see if it was able to bear some fruit with respect to having the kids do it in a more subdued, more controlled environment where there's not a pressuring defender. Now, conversely, you may say, yeah, Tomas, this is nice, but you haven't seen my team. My team can play. We're pretty good. What do I need to do to change it? Well, no problem. You just go to the more challenging, and instead of having the players in the defending zone stay there, now you can release the players to come and bother them, where the defenders can come out of that zone here at the bottom and come and defend them as much as they can, and really put the other team under pressure. Or you find yourself a little hybrid, a little mix, and a little blend of the two. Maybe you put something like this together, and then you put something like this together, and you say, you know what? When I call on the Red Bulls to go forward, then maybe I'll send one defender out of that defending zone, but the other defender's got to stay there, right? And maybe when Columbus Crew has to go the other way, then I'll tell Columbus Crew, hey, you guys can go, but I'm going to have one defender stay in the buffer and one defender go and defend, okay, or something like that. So there's a sample practice component of the play, practice, play with your baseline core activity, with your less challenging one and your more challenging one. Now, we talk about in theoretical terms, well, which one should I do? I have no idea which one you should do because I don't know your group and I don't know your team and I don't know you. You are the one who needs to decide what you should do. And in this particular discussion, failure is okay. In fact, failure is encouraged. Failure is recommended here for us as coaches, so you can kind of tinker with what it is that you can and cannot do and what you want to get out of the session that you plan for these kids. So I go back to my answer. I have no idea which one's best. I would argue probably if it was me, I would try to do this little one here, knowing that I may not be able to. But there's nothing wrong with a little bit of challenge. Remember that that fourth part of the elements of a good training activity is a challenging environment. So maybe we'll challenge them first. And then maybe 2 weeks later, I say, you know what? I'm going to go the other way. Maybe I'll give them very little challenge first here. Then we'll bump up to the core activity. Or maybe you're thinking, yeah, you know what? I'm never going to do this middle one here. I'm always going to go with the top one. Or I may forego these top two ones and go right into this one because that's what the game is like. Fair enough. You know your group and you know what Johnny can do. You know what Sally can do. Or you know what Timmy cannot do maybe yet. And you know what Wendy cannot do maybe yet. So it's all you on that one. No problem there. Okay? And then, of course, the second phase of the second play phase of the training session is to give it a whirl. Let's see how you did for the last, say, 30, 35 minutes or so between your first play phase and your practice phase, and let's see if they can play. Let's see if they can play 4v4, and let's see if we can find good moments, either to freeze and really reward somebody that's doing something good, or maybe coach and give some feedback during the game. So the coaching and the game methodology, where you don't need to freeze or talk in natural stoppages, and you just let the game flow and let them play. Hey, Timmy, I love that. Good job. Sally, were you looking to pass there? That's great. Things like that, where you can reinforce the positive behaviors that you're trying to get out of that session. So again, the first play phase, as you'll see here, is to pass the dribble past opponents. And then, of course, we want to create chances and eventually score goals. In the practice component, what we just went over with the three activities, the baseline, the core activity, the more challenging, and the less challenging, we want to follow the same process and try to dribble past opponents so that we can be comfortable in creating chances and maybe we can score some goals. And now here we are in the second play phase. You can see in red here. And again, we have the same desired objective and outcome. Where we can be influential and where we can have, I think, a positive impact is on the player actions and the key qualities that are needed for us to bring those out into in an environment like this and in an environment over here in the practice in the second practice phase. So your second practice phase might be the less challenging one, or your second practice phase might be the more challenging one. Or heck, you say, you know what, I'm going to stay with this, but put a few parameters. Maybe when I call the team's name, each kid on the team only has 4 touches to get out of the defending buffer and to go into the other side, or something to that effect. Okay, so you can manipulate the parameters at play, which are the players, the size of your field, and the number of touches or number of restrictions you put on them as you wish to try to get something out of that training session. Again, I go back to the same spot, which is you will know better than anybody where on this continuum here you think you fall. So there's the second play phase of that little 4v4. Then we go back to where we started and say, okay, where am I on the 5 elements of a training activity? So I would suggest you go to blue first, which is, okay, hey, real quick, let me think here. Okay, how did I do? Let me be honest. Let me be objective. I know I wanted to do X, Y, and Z. How did I get X, Y, and Z accomplished? So did I achieve the goals and objectives that I wanted to have for today? What did I do well as a coach? What did we do well as coaches? And maybe what could we change, or what should we change based on that training session? And obviously, the younger the player, the more abstract it can be, and the more off-the-wall items could happen and off-the-wall events could happen. Most of them are humorous, of course, but as you try to bring a little bit, and I do mean a little bit of structure and routine to manage their always in motion status and state, then we need to make sure that we understand that, hey, if I can get one of these training session questions answered and resolved, then for the next training session, I think I'm doing pretty well. Then you move on back here to the red box and you say, okay, how were those 5 pieces? How are those 5 elements of my training activity? I can't probably get, as a U8 coach, to the coaching number 5 here if I don't get at least a couple of these down. Now, if you are comfortable and if you can, without a doubt, 100% say to yourself, I always get these 4 done right here, then hey, kudos to you. And I need to come and watch you practice your craft, because it's always a struggle for us, at least in my club. And as I go around the state and work with other clubs as well and leagues, for coaches to be to find a comfort level and to be confident in themselves to try to get through all 4. Certainly, if you start with a good organizational level, then I think trying to get something that replicates the game, that is game-like, that is repetitive in nature, so we can work on that topic and work on that skill and work on that task over and over. And then we add a little bit of a degree of challenge, and I think we're doing well for ourselves as coaches. I really do. So I'm going to move my thing here to see if there's any questions. I don't believe I see anyone.
Nope, we don't have any questions.
Okay. Now, guys and girls, don't be shy now, all right? And you don't have to worry about asking a question. If you want to interject something, then please do so, okay? Please do so. Otherwise, we're going to keep going and kind of move on to the 77 one now. So, okay. Okay, so moving on to the 77 one now, we're going to take the same concept and the same notions that we discussed at the top side of the hour, and we're going to say, okay, let's look at a 7v7. Let's look at a U9/U10 training session of the very same topic. What could we do differently, or what would we do differently, given the fact that our players are a little bit more experienced, a little bit older, and maybe they've gone through a play, practice, play season or year with your club. So we have the first play phase, same idea, right? In this case, it's about a 20 by 30 field, and you're going to play 2v2 or 3v3. Let them self-regulate, let them come up with their own rules and guidelines. Kick in is what we always try to do up here in my area, rather than throwing, so we can keep the game moving. And plus, it works anytime you can get them to pass the ball is a good thing. So the objective of this play phase is to pass the dribble forward and score goals. Same objective as we just went over, and we want to create this time 1v1 and 2v1, and then figure out when and why to pass and when and why to dribble. So no problem. There's our first play phase. Everybody should be fine that. And then we look at our practice phase here. Same concept and same setup within the lesson plan. Now we have a base activity or core activity of 3 versus 2. So you'll see that these yellows right here are goalkeepers. You are standing right here as the coach. You have your 1, 2, 3 blue players, and you have your 2 red players who are defending. And it's 3 versus 2. So ball gets played into from a coach to a blue player. Can the blue player try to go to goal and score if he can or if she can? Or in order to score, can she find a pass first, or can he find a pass first and then a dribble after that, right? The keywords are still going to be the same. We want to try to open up correctly, look to take her on as best we can, look to play with the head up. When should she pass? When should she dribble, and why? And then we're looking at starting to plant a seed with respect to spacing. Hey, how can we help her find a better opening? Hey, how can we help him make a good pass? Where do you think you could be to help him make a good decision, et cetera, et cetera? So there's your baseline, your core activity. And then you say, you know what, if we want to make it a bit less challenging and we don't want to spend time worrying about moving anything on the field or working on moving anything else that we've set up with as far as our equipment and our initial introduction to the session, well, let's just take numbers off the field then. So let's play 2v1 instead of 3v2 and really give the 2 attackers some space here. Obviously, with 1 less defender and 1 less attacker, you would think there'd be a lot more space with which they can find a certain comfort level on the ball, and then based on that comfort level, make a sound decision. When I say a sound decision, I'm probably talking consistent decision, right? We're not going to solve anything in the next 30 minutes, but maybe we can resolve a couple of issues that those players might have, and certainly some of those issues are confidence, inability, or unwillingness to take players on, or maybe they don't find the right moment. Maybe they dribble when perhaps a pass was there, or maybe they pass when perhaps a dribbling opportunity was there for them. So we're looking at 2v1 right here. And then maybe you're the same coach from earlier that says, Tomas, it's so basic, it's so pedestrian, why can't we challenge him? You can, no problem. If that's the case, then let's go right here and let's challenge them. Let's go 4 versus 3 now instead of 3 versus 2. Okay, we're crunching the space both in terms of width going this way and in terms of height or depth going this way, because now there's 3 defenders trying to make things difficult for you guys as attackers rather than the 2. Of course, there's another added dimension that you're giving to the attackers because there's 4 of them, but now we're looking at 4 versus 3. Okay, and then maybe you add an element that says, okay, if the red team gets it, then the yellow goalkeeper, she can come out and play, and let's see if we can go the other way. And the red team, when the red team gets possession of the ball, those red players can go to the 2 little counter goals there. So all you've done is you've made it a bit more realistic based on where you think your team is. You'll notice that all we did here in the more challenging version is we added a red defender. We also added a blue attacker. And in order to make the field sort of balance out and make it realistic, we just spread the 2 little counter goals out a little bit further away. So rather than have the 2 counter goals this far apart, now they're just this far apart for the red team to try to score goals when it gets possession. Okay? The elements of the training activity, of course, are still there. The key components that you're looking to drag out of the players through guided discovery are still there. Hey, at the end of the day, it's this. Whether they're 8-year-olds in a 4v4 or whether they're 9 and 10-year-olds in this 7v7 environment, we're looking at the same things. How do I get Johnny or how do I get Susie on this field to pick up on what's happening around you and around her? Because you as a coach and then her teammates and her on the ball are all going to be important decision-making parameters that are going to be in play. So what we want to try to do is to think about as coaches, hey, as I get to a point in the session where it looks like there's a flickering light and the bulb is going off and they're having that little aha moment, can I maybe freeze and really paint as clear of a picture as I can with these kids of what it is that we would like to do? And this is where methodology, I think, comes in, and the intervention, so the coaching point methodology comes in here, where when you freeze and you stop the exercise, maybe try to do so at a moment where you can really, really show something that is being done well or fairly well. It's easy to stop and correct and say, no, we don't want to do X, Y, and Z, but that's going to get boring. That's going to get a little defeatist, if you will, from a methodology standpoint. Maybe what we can do is stop and freeze on more positive moments and go from there. My good friend Mark Conley often talks about in coaching discussions, reading the book by Tony DeCicco that's entitled Catch Them Being Good. And the gist is when Tony DeCicco was coaching before the 1999 Women's World Cup, which of course the U.S. won, he and Jay Hoffman and Lauren Gregg, his assistants, were talking, and some of their veteran players, were asking the coaches, hey, why do we always stop, and why do we always feel like we're doing something bad? Why can't we stop and you find something good? And he thought, well, you know what? That's a good point. And certainly it changed his outlook and it's changed his methodology a little bit. And he ended up writing a book about it called Catch Them Being Good. I read that book when Mark mentioned it to me. I had not heard of it when he first mentioned it to me many moons ago. And I read it and I found it quite enjoyable. It actually helped me soften my approach, if you will, to coaching, especially with the younger kids, and trying to catch them doing something that is right and something good, rather than to find something to fault them with at that moment. So anyway, I digress from my little rambling there. But in this little 4v3, I like this 4v3 activity. I think it's realistic. I think it's game-like. I think you have a lot of repetition that you can bring to the exercise. And there are a lot of opportunities for you to make coaching points without having to stop or freeze. If you are fortunate enough to have somebody else coaching with you, or if you feel like you have maybe an older sibling or an assistant coach that can play the balls in, then what you can do as a coach is to kind of move around this little field here and to coach from different viewpoints and talk to your players. But I do think you're going to find a lot of opportunities to have 1v1 and 2v1 moments. And then what they do with those moments, that's a different discussion. But we're trying to get them to a point where they're confident and comfortable in dealing with those moments, and then maybe consistently selecting out of all their possible choices a good option to go with. And in this case, it's either pass or dribble until they get a little bit closer to the goal and maybe get a shot on goal. So there's your core activity. There's your less challenging one, and then there's your more challenging one. The key words here in the guided questions, from a terminology standpoint, are going to be the same whether you're coaching 8-year-olds or whether you're coaching 10-year-olds. I think it's how you phrase it and how you frame the conversation that I think is important to get as much as you can out of this fairly simple exercise. So, any questions or anything to add from anybody?
Nope, we don't have any questions in, Tomas.
Oh, you guys are shy.
You must be doing a wonderful job explaining
That must be it. There must be no other reason. Yes, that must be it for sure. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so there's the 4v4 setup, if you will, and template. There's a 7v7 template, right? And then whether, again, if we're talking about the 4v4 kids or the 7v7 kids, I always refer back to this little resource and say to myself, okay, how did it go? The key thing, and we talked about this before with coaches, the key thing is you are the only one that knows what your practice should have been or how it should have gone. Nobody else knows that. Therefore, my assertion to you is this: since you're the only one that knows how it should have gone and how it should have flowed, you are therefore the only one that knows how it didn't go and how it didn't maybe flow like you wanted. So then no problem. You just make the adjustment and you're good to go. The only thing I would like most coaches to think about, and I wish most coaches did, is to emphasize, as we're talking about with little players and younger players, is to try to minimize the amount of downtime and dead time that you have. Because in my experience, downtime is bad time for a 4v4 and even 7v7 kids. So if we can structure our training session to go from the opening stanza of the play phase when they start playing till the very, very end where you give a little high five, a team cheer, and you wish them well until the next day, an hour, maybe hour and 15 later, then can we make sure that from point A to point Z, everything flows nicely and we can keep going? Because then you can maximize the number of opportunities that you have to coach. And if we can maximize our opportunities, then by default, then there's a maximum number of good points and of efficient coaching moments that we can reach one day. And that's what we're looking for sure. So then I leave you with this, the 5 elements for training activity, right? We kind of talked about it ad nauseum here a little bit. And there you are. So let me go back, if I may. Marcus, we're supposed to be done at 8, is that right?
We can finish at any time.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to keep going here if you guys would let me. Okay, so here we go. Marcus, are you seeing the game again?
I'm seeing the game.
Okay, great. So let me think about this, and you don't have to answer anybody here watching, but think about this as we're going to play it. How often, when we're coaching 4v4, do we have this right here? Not very often. I mean, if you freeze here, you have pretty good spacing, right? You have a player on the ball, you have a player supporting, you're going to have a player behind here, and same thing here, okay? What we more often have is this. Hold on, give it 5 seconds or 10 seconds. All right, here we go. Yeah, okay, that's what we have. And you know what? That's fine. That's fine, because then you're looking for these kinds of moments, I think. There, our guy in the blue is trying as best he can to take on players, okay? So that's what we're looking for. Then you can then you can maximize the opportunities that with what you saw with this little activity, or again, the less challenging one, or again, the more challenging one, if you're talking about the 4v4. Or you move on and say, you know what? You can maximize opportunities with a core activity for the U10 and U9 players of 3v2, a little bit less challenging for 2v1, a little bit more challenging for 4v3, right? Here's the key thing, and I want to leave you with this, is the influence that you have as a coach cannot be underscored enough. Okay? And I cannot stress to you guys and gals, ladies and gents, enough that the influence and impact that you have on that child and on that student of the game as a player on a real-time basis at practices is undeniable. So take that charge that you have from your governing body, from your club or from your league or from your team parents, and really take that to heart, because you have a now opportunity to get them to continue enjoying the game and to get better at the same time, because the two don't have to be mutually exclusive. In fact, I would argue that the two should be very much mutually inclusive. Questions from anybody? No?
If you have any questions, go ahead and click the chat or the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen and ask away while Tomas is here. While we're waiting for questions to come in, just wanted to remind everybody that we have a couple of more trainings or webinars coming up with our WVSA Digital Network Series. Our next one, we've got two coming up next week. On Thursday at 7 p.m., we have Robin Kenny. She's from Mindfulness Athletics, and she's going to be talking to players and parents about managing expectations during this uncertain time. There's obviously a lot of anxiousness and uncertainty about how things are going to go back to normal, if they're going to go back to normal. Kids going off to college, going into high school, what's going to happen? Will there be soccer? Won't there be? She'll be talking about a lot of different things like that coming up on the webinar on Thursday. And then on Friday at 7 p.m., we're excited to welcome Carl Gray from the Northern Virginia Soccer Club. He's a U.S. Soccer A licensed coach, and he's going to be talking about the ins and outs of a training session. That's Friday at 7 p.m. Of course, you can go to our website, wvsoccer.net, and click resources, and then click WVSA Digital Network Series, and you can find all of the ones that we've done, all the ones that are coming up. You can register there. And the ones that we've done before, the one we did with Tomas, the one we did with Erica Suter, Connor Harris, Wendy Earlbeck, you can replay them. They'll all be available, and this one will be available on demand sometime next week. We'll make sure to post the links on our social media as soon as we get it up and running, so people will be able to check it out anytime.
Great, that's good. Yeah, this webinar series has ended up being something that's very, very productive and worthwhile. Kudos to Marcus. Last question for you guys, and you do not have to answer, which is good because nobody's answered so far. Come on now, is this. In 2 weeks, on the 15th of May, we are hoping to celebrate the fact that at least here in West Virginia, we can get back to playing soccer a few days later if all the different entities allow us that opportunity. So to celebrate that, we want to have one last coaching education webinar, and I'm looking for topics. I'm looking for ideas. What would you like to hear about? Whom would you like to hear from, and whom do you not want to hear from anymore? I will not take offense. Well, what are you looking for as far as webinar series topics and discussion points? Please let us know. Either contact Marcus directly, or you can contact me, or you can send a chat, but let somebody know that's affiliated with West Virginia Soccer Association, and we will get that taken care of, and as best we can, try to fill that need. But if you're looking for something in particular, please let us know, because we're looking for feedback on the future topics.
I'll make sure to post something on our social media platforms asking the question and soliciting for feedback on that exact subject.
That'd be great. That would be great. All right, then. Well, I appreciate your time and your willingness to spend some time in trying to share some ideas here. And happy soccering to everybody. And let's hope for a grassy field, sunny days, and rolling soccer balls soon.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tomas, for checking in tonight, and we appreciate you tuning in for our WVSA Digital Network Series webinar. Like I said, go to our website, wvsoccer.net, click on resources, and then click on WVSA Digital Network Series, and you can find out all of our upcoming webinars. We'll continue to have more as the weeks go on. Stay safe, stay sane, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.
Take care.